This conference will now be recorded.
The room's a little light tonight. Feel like we had really good dinner, so if you didn't come, you missed a really good dinner. Item number 2, public comment. Anyone in the audience will be given time to speak to items on the consent agenda. Please ask that the item be removed from the consent agenda. Items pulled will be heard at the beginning of the regular agenda. Members of the public will be given an opportunity to speak to all other items prior to council action begins. Is there anybody that would like to speak about the consent agenda? Is there anybody online? That's what we're supposed to ask. Yeah. Anybody raising their hands online? All right, we'll move on. I see nothing. Go to the consent agenda. Approval of the minutes led by the planning organization Air Quality NPO. Runway, oh, I gotta turn it over. National performance measure 4-year target adjustments.
I have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Got a first.
Second.
And I have a second. So first is Liz and second is Tricia. Thank you. Any discussion?
I'll just mention for the record that that's resolution 2025-09.
Any other discussion? All in favor? By aye?
Aye.
Carries unanimously. Okay. Going on to leading planning agencies and air quality agenda. The Air Pollution Control Division, written, it's in your handout. NPO Air Quality Program updates. Dina from Two Roads Environmental. You on the phone, Dina?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Good evening. Just going to hit a couple of the highlights of the report that you have before you. Lots of things going on air quality wise within the nation and within Colorado specifically. Tonight I'm going to focus on 2 topics in particular. The CMAQ funding, or Congestion Mitigation Air Quality Improvement funding. That supports a lot of work that the NPO does, as well as a lot of air quality planning work in the non-attainment area. And so just want to highlight that, it was questioned whether or not there was any kind of thoughts that funding might be going away. Sorry, I'm getting a lot of feedback.
Hold on.
Okay. That's better. Or maybe. There you go. So I just want to highlight that at the RAC board meeting, CDOT's Darius Pakbaz was very quick to share when there was some question about whether the CMAQ funding might be going away. He did not think that that was an issue at all. And in fact, he said it would take an act of Congress to withhold CMAQ funding from the state and local authorities. So that was very reassuring. The other topic I wanted to talk about was related to the potential control strategies, air pollution control strategies that are being considered for inclusion into this ozone SIP that's being developed this year. And in particular, there's a couple of what the RAC calls slates of options that they've put out there for discussion purposes and as an example. And so I included that slide on page 2 of my report. And specifically, there's a couple of different transportation-related strategies that are included in both of these options. So you have this slate option number 1, which is a kind of a menu of options. And so you see, oil and gas related venting and blowdown control strategies, and lawn and garden or landscape maintenance is anticipated to be part of the effort as well. They're also touching on consumer products, and that's the VOC content and the products that you and I can purchase and use here in Colorado. And then they're touching on these last two, like indirect sources and mobile sources emission caps. Both of those are transportation related, and you'll see both options or both slates include those same strategies. However, it's, the timing seems to be very different, or not very different, but off by about a year between the two. So with regards to indirect sources, I just want to highlight there is an ongoing indirect source work group that's exploring potentially regulating subsets of indirect sources. And so they're focusing on 3 different categories right now. That's warehouses and the equipment that they use for their fleet, as well as moving products around on site. Then there's the entertainment and recreation category. And so this is like Mile High and Ball Arena, as well as big recreation venues like, maybe Water World or something like that. And then you have the third category is universities and airports. So just a couple of highlights from these is there's some pre-existing model rules that are out there that can be used, and in fact EPA has approved them in the case of some things going on in California. And some stakeholders actually have pre-existing procedures or plans or strategies in place on site that already, get some transportation related emission reductions. And so those are good things. Several challenges, though, that have come up through this process is just generally related to stakeholder engagement. Getting the people aware of this process and to the table and actively participating has been a challenge. The timeline has never been our friend. They're set to have the RAC board vote in early June of this year for a proposal to go to the Air Quality Control Commission in July. And then there's, broad questions about enforceability, like who would administer this rule and how would they do that? And there's no one standing up saying we will do it and we have the resources to do it at this time. There's other questions about enforceability as well, as how do you enforce, again, do you enforce against the owner or of the venue, or do you, how do they enforce against maybe their patrons and how they transport themselves to a venue or something like that? So those are broadly some of the questions and issues that are coming up that are kind of influencing the progress of those subcommittees. Moving on to the mobile source emission targets. So the RAC has put out a concept paper. It's linked in my paper, my report. I can certainly get you the link if you need it in the chat. But it's very similar to motor vehicle emission budgets that the MPO is already, planning and striving to meet as they, plan transportation projects into the future. So one of the big questions that has come out of that, I'll just highlight before I go into the questions. So the concept paper outlines that there would be setting of emission targets in terms of maximum annual average daily NOx and VOC emissions from on-road and non-road, equipment classes. And then they would set, targets for reduction based on 2025 levels of 10% and I guess decrease by 10% every year, basically until they hit roughly 50% reductions. And so that's really locking in some hard reductions that may be challenging to meet. And so there's some questions that have come up related to that. Now, one of the things I want to highlight is that This paper and this strategy in particular is not set to be discussed before the RAC, I guess, strategy committee until April, and then the board in May. And then, as you recall, then the board is supposed to vote on the overall strategies that they want to recommend go to the Air Quality Control Commission be considered for an overall SIP proposal. And so the timing is really, really challenging with this. And so because time is tight, I think it's really important that NPO staff take a look at this approach and how challenging or easy it might be to meet that, so they can weigh in that RAC's process on that concept paper as it is, just because there's not a lot of time between now and April, and then when the board ultimately would vote on this in June. So other high level comments that kind of go along with that strategy, again, is stakeholder engagement. We want to make sure that that the stakeholders like the NPO is being engaged in this and understand how it may affect them, the timeline, and then challenges with enforceability. Like, what does it mean to set these targets? Is this in a rule? Is this rule in a SIP? Is it something different? Is it a soft target? Is it a hard target? We don't know at this point. So I think starting to ask those kinds of questions and formulate those kinds of questions so we can have a more robust conversation at the RAC's meetings, I think would be really, really important. So those are my high level I guess highlights from my report. Are there any questions on what I've talked about or anything else that's in my report?
Any questions for Dina? Any online? See anybody?
See Kristen.
Kristen, Commissioner?
Yeah, I'm sorry I can't be with you. I have a really bad case of the flu. I'm not even gonna I'm not even gonna turn on my camera, but I will just say about what Dina was saying is if the RAC as a body wants to prepare something for me to propose at those meetings, yeah, I am representing the NPO at the RAC. And so if we feel like these aren't targets that we could make, then if I would like to have that information, because I'm in a disadvantage of not really having the technical expertise to know if we could or we couldn't, or if the membership of the NPO wants us to, I will say a lot of times these things do get voted on, and the RAC is a big board, and so oftentimes things go through. But if you want that to not be part of the SIP, then I would need to know that and have some notes about, what we would like to say about both of those control strategies that Dina was talking about, the indirect and the mobility. What's the other one called? Mobile sources. And so just know that I'm happy to pass that information on, but I would kind of need to know what people think about that.
Anything else?
Mr. Chair, I'll just mention that, I think Dina does a really good job of in a report in which she just vocalized expressing at the staff level, and our expert consultants level, what some of the challenges are with those as they're currently drafted, and so I think we're appreciative Commissioner Stevens' offer to help to communicate some of that to the RAC, because I think the challenge is the level of uncertainty that still exists in them. And if they're going to start to become or be proposed to be regulatory in nature, I think we don't know right now how we would go about complying with those or what the enforcement mechanisms would be.
None of this is real easy right now. It's all up in the air. Anything else? All right, thank you, Dina. Well done as normal. Item 7, Regional Air Quality Council report. Commissioner Stevens, Vice Chair.
Thank you. So the RAC board's receiving and reviewing the Serious Ozone Plan, chapters 6 through 13 so far. And we'll get that done by the June 6th meeting. Preliminary 2026 ozone modeling results are under review, and those will be presented at the March 19th RAC Control Strategy Committee meeting. The current findings so far are that the total emission of NOx and VOCs between 2022 and 2026 are not changing or declining. So modeled air quality will not change as a result. Some emissions categories are decreasing noticeably, and that includes on-road and non-road emissions, while other significant emission categories like power plants, industry, oil, and gas are not declining and are flat over that 4-year period. As Dina was saying, control strategy development work is active in collaboration with the APCD, focused on the moment on emissions control opportunities in the next 2 to 3 years from landscape maintenance equipment, and we already know that we've been doing that work, consumer products, and as Dina was talking about, the trips to and from facilities, which they call indirect sources. So those are 3 of the control strategies that are being reviewed. So they're again happy to pass anything on to the RAC that this body wants to pass on to them, but that's what's happening, and we do have a meeting tomorrow morning at 9:30.
Any questions from the Regional Air Quality Council? All right, thank you, Kristen. Guess what? Number 8, you're up again. Non-attainment area air pollution mitigation enterprise. NFRMPO.
There you go. You guys just like hearing me talk so much. Sorry. Okay. With regard to the NAPME, we met on February 27th. We approved the NAPME's budget and the fee level increases. So folks might remember that the NAPME's funding comes from the fees on rideshare services and on delivery fees. And so that fee can go up with inflation, and we did approve that to go up with inflation. It went up very modestly this year. And then we discussed eligibility criteria for the new grant that we have out. We took off the eligibility of needing to be on the federal or needing to not be on the federal inactive list. We know that people are often on the federal inactive list due to circumstances beyond their control, whether that's acquiring right away or other reasons. And so we didn't want that to hinder any communities from getting these grant dollars. So we removed that as criteria. And then with regard to that community clean transportation assistance small grant opportunity, folks probably remember that there was about $17 million in grants that we're going to push out. The update that we received, I think there are about 15 requests already. The application process, if you don't need engineering help, I believe goes through April. There are already 15 applications for more than the dollars that are in the bucket. So there'll be some hard decisions to make, but it's good that people know that this grant is happening and that they're trying to access this grant. And that is all for the NAPME.
Any questions from NFRMPO? Thank you again, Commissioner. You're off the hook for a while.
Thank you. Good. I'll rest my voice.
All right, we're going to move into the Metropolitan Planning Organization agenda. Reports from the chair. Item 9. So we had a very interesting discussion on the budget today at the STAT meeting. And quick highlights, the total available revenue is $2.2 billion. And that includes the enterprise and CDOT. That's just not CDOT's dollars, that's all enterprises and CDOT. Legislative budget changes, there's been a few changes. Probably the one I think is most to highlight is road safety surcharge was lowered to from 65.1 to 21.8. ensuring less impact to local governments. So it's better than a poke in the eye, that's all I can say. It's not what we like, but it's, there's just things going on. General fund transfer from the state highway user fund tax reduced by 25 million per year for the next 2 years, 64 million in 25-26, and then 49.5 million in 26-27. So not a lot of money. There's money coming in, but not as much as there has been in the past. The thing that I think is real important is they're going to keep faster safety and asset management. Try to hold that as, and Cecil, you can expand on this. I'm just going by some notes. Trying to hold that a little bit tighter and try not to reduce those budgets as much, which is appreciative because I think those are two important categories. 10-year plan, total allocation is 95.9. That's a 24.1 decrease. So seeing some hits there. So I'm going to have Paul put this out to everybody, Paul and Becky. Maybe we can get the presentation in a minute.
Yeah, we can pull that out of the staff packet.
I think it's important because it's going to affect our 10-year plan. It's just where we're at right now. And then a little bit more update. Federal government, I've talked to some FHWA folks, and the FHWA team has been reduced to about 11 out of 23. 4 of the top people took early out packages. They were all within a couple of years of retirement, so they said, I'm going. But they're down. They're on hold right now, so some stuff, John, when I talked to him, he's hopeful that things will recover a little bit after they get settled in. But just so you know, it's probably going to be a little slower at FHWA for a while. That's all I have.
Thanks.
We'll go to item number 10, report from the executive director.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So first up this evening, I just want to bring your attention to one of the items in your handouts package. It's a letter to the Environmental Protection Agency that I co-signed along with the other executive directors of the Intermountain West NPOs. Basically, this is a continuation of our conversations with the EPA about trying to find solutions for the really unique challenges of background ozone in the Intermountain West region. So this is a letter directed to the new EPA Administrator, Lee Zeldin, and it's a letter of introduction to the issue. It includes our previous correspondence with the last administration, and then really just extends kind of an olive branch and a desire to work together with this new administration on the issue. So as a group, the Intermountain West NPO directors recognize that there's a lot going on in Washington right now, and so we expect it's probably going to take the new EPA administration some time to digest what we've provided to them and get settled. But the groups are continuing to meet, and we're hoping that once the EPA gets a chance to read this letter and catch up on the background, that we'll reestablish dialogue with the new administration. So that's what that's all about. As the chair started to touch on some of the impacts at the federal level, I'd like to just kind of give an update from last month, what we're seeing based on the best information that we have. At the NPO level, the bottom line is that for NPO operations, the federal transportation continues to flow. That's what we're experiencing here at the local level, that we're able to invoice against our federal grants and get that reimbursement. Disruptions have happened for some NPOs, but that seems to be kind of the exception rather than the rule. And it really depends on the region of the country that you're in. But here in the state of Colorado, NPOs have been receiving their federal funding. For federal project funding, for you all as members of the NPO and the federal grants that you've got, if you already have the award, then the expectation is that money is still flowing to you. If you do not yet have an award, then it's likely that you're experiencing some delays in that area. And then, of course, we've got some grants as well that are in kind of a gray area where there's been conversation of an award, or an award has been expressed, but they've not signed contracts for it yet. And so those are some of the challenging ones that a lot of people have their eyes on to make sure that they don't get lost in the shuffle, because they are a part of that gray area. A couple of the other impactful events that have unfolded over the last month, starting out with a directive that came out a couple of weeks ago that would have changed the process for the review of STIPs, as well as STIP amendments and a variety of other plan documents. This would have been impactful to us and to all of our member entities, because it would introduce extra time and uncertainty into the review of these documents. And the real challenge there would be if that resulted in inconsistencies between our locally adopted plans and the statewide plan, which could lead to funding delays and delays in construction. Fortunately, there was widespread feedback from industry groups, wide variety of sources, everyone from AASHTO to the Brookings Institute, NFRMPO, our national NPO organization, providing feedback about the potential impacts of that. And so the administration has rolled that back and indicated that, at least for now, the review process is going to remain the way that it is, which includes the involvement of the state's FHWA staff. Yeah, and that ties in closely to what Chair Olson was sharing, that there are local impacts, here to our Colorado FHWA office. They've done a great job of communicating who their new contacts are with us, letting us know who to be working with. But the reality is there's more than a 50% reduction in the staffing of that regional office for Colorado. So we're overall just continuing to monitor the changes. We're keeping the executive committee informed if really impactful things come up. And then I'll use this time on a monthly basis to just let you know what the changes have been over the last month. And I will wrap up with happy news, which is that we have hired a controller to be a part of our team. This has been a very long recruitment effort. So yeah, just in the past couple of weeks, we made an offer and it was accepted by a lady named Tanya Burshek. She's been with Colorado Early Colleges for the last 9 years. She's got a really solid background with grants, accounting fundamentals, and budgeting, a wide variety of finance, all in a public sector type organization. She's going to be starting with us after spring break, so March 24th. We've still got the mobility director recruitment active underway, but we're pretty far into that process. So we'll see how it goes, and I may have an update for you on that at our meeting next month. So.
Okay. Any questions for our fine executive?
I do have a question, Mr. Chair, if I could. Paul?
Yeah.
Regarding the federal funding, are you losing sleep over this? Or you feel pretty comfortable, or wait and see? What's your gut feel?
I'm not losing sleep over it. I think we've got good industry organizations that are communicating kind of the importance of the role of regional governance structures and making sure that transportation projects happen. And I think that this most recent example of the process change that would have directed STIP amendments to a USDOT central office, the fact that changed as a result of that feedback means that the administration is listening. And so, yeah, it's something we're monitoring very closely. But so far, we've been able to continue to access the funding that we need to get our job done.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Paul?
Is it okay if I make a short comment here?
Ma'am.
So I just want to say the commissioners were on Capitol Hill this past week, which is where I got this lovely cold. And I will tell you that our representatives on Capitol Hill were very interested to know which grants were being frozen or delayed or paused, and offered to a person, and we have three representatives in Larimer County, to follow up with those grants that were in some way delayed. And so I guess I would urge folks to do that at the municipal level. And I think you guys have National League of Cities coming up, and we just finished National Association of Counties. And so I guess I would urge you to, when you go visit it with your legislators, have a list of those the grants that you're concerned about, and they can follow up. And sometimes that works like magic, and it frees up those dollars, and they start coming through. So I would just encourage folks to do that. We did not hear about any permanent delays in transportation funding, but just that some were still being looked at. But I think the squeaky wheel gets the grease, and so I would encourage you to speak out when you see something like that happening.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Anything else? Let's move on to item 11, legislative updates and reports. It's written in your handout. And do know that if there's something written in the handout that you want to talk about, you can obviously do that. Item 12, TAC is written on page 32. Item 13, mobility written. And that moves us to the next agenda item. Item 14, action items for the NPO is item 14, Front Range Passenger Rail District Board, Front Range NPO representation, resolution 25-10.
Mr. Chair, if I may speak.
Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. I was initially hesitant to have to leave this board, though I think I agreed at the last meeting to do so. Felt a little pressured, given last Friday's meeting and learning that the passenger rail is adding 3 more stations, none of which will be berthed. It was just totally, I don't know another word, but heartbreaking that all this advocacy we've been doing, I felt was to no good. And so I am fully in support of putting Mayor Pro Tem Mallow on there and hopefully do a better job, and Loveland will have a voice on that council. So very supportive of our neighbors being on there. But from birth to end, had a meeting with our town administrator and our Mayor Pro Tem, and it just doesn't seem to be doing any good for us to have a voice on there. It seems to be kind of a waste of my time. So happy to give that up, and love to make the motion unless there's any other comments on this.
Is there anybody else that wants to sit on this?
Well, for sure, this needs to be voted on.
Yeah.
So nominations are expected, et cetera. Will, I appreciate your comments. You've been an advocate of Berthoud from the get-go, and we'll follow your own that it's going a different direction, and I appreciate the fact that we may not get any money for it, it may not happen at all. So this is but until they tell us to stop doing things for front range passenger rail, we got to keep up with it. And we have had some conversations about sites, and the one thing I want you to know is that if you need anything from Berthoud perspective, if I'm a passenger rail person, then just call me.
More than appreciated that. You guys have always been great neighbors, and though we might not see anything of this, but more traffic, it'll be good that someone gets some out of this.
Thank you for that.
So we have a nomination on the table with Mayor Pro Tem Mallow. Is there any other nominations? Well, with that.
Just to clarify real quick, we're going for John to May of 2028.
Whatever your term was, yeah.
We were going to make the switch next year, so I don't know, is that 2028 was the official ending, right?
Yeah.
Okay. That work for you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'll go ahead and move to approve resolution number 2025-10, the North Front Range Transportation Air Quality Planning Council approving NFRPO representatives to the Front Range Passenger Rail District Board of Directors, removing Councilmember Will Carspeck and replacing with Councilmember John Mallow, whose term will expire in May 2028 to serve as director on the Front Range Passenger Rail District.
So we have a motion on the table. Do I get a second?
I'll second.
We got a second? Is there any more discussion? I want to say, Will, I served on it with you for 2 years, and you fought valiantly for the North Front Range and Bertha. The first 2 years were probably the most difficult first 2 years. Setting up the board, setting up all the policies, setting up everything. Sometimes we felt like we were sitting in quicksand and not really moving anywhere.
Yep.
Your voice was, during the time I was there, was well respected and appreciated. So I want to thank you first and foremost for your service that you did on it. You might have lost a few more hair follicles. But,
Yeah, I know. But thank you very much for that.
But you did really well. I was happy to serve with you.
Thank you. Likewise.
Any other? Go ahead.
And thank you, Will, for your service there, and thank you for helping me get up to speed on what's going on. I
Sure.
appreciate all of that.
Certainly. I think John and you guys will pair well together, being neighbors. I don't really have any notes that aren't already posted on their website, but if I see anything that I have, I'll be happy to pass it over.
Yeah, I don't know if we.
Oh, and I'll be on that next board meeting. I didn't even talk to our chair about it, but I'll be on there and I'll announce it and switch it over.
Yeah, because I'm sure there's got to be some paperwork somewhere.
Well, Becky might forward that probably, and I don't know if you have to apply, this is kind of your application, but I'll clear it with chair. I might not even be on there, but I'll let them know ahead of time, and then we might just get on a three-way call or have Tricia in four-way, so it's also moved before the next meeting.
Yeah, 11:41, I think it was, is what, you don't have to go to Senate to get confirmed anymore, so just automatically a letter, and I think a swap out is all we need.
Yep, that resolution, and we'll get you.
All right, so discussion will end. All in favor of putting John Mallow on the Front Range Passenger Rail? With an aye?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
All right, congratulations, John, and congratulations, Will.
Okay.
You got some free time.
Okay. Moving on to discussion items. Item 15, MPO 10-year priority list. Mrs. Carrasco.
Hello. Also with the flu thing, it's not
Stay over there.
yeah, I plan to. It is my youngest child. It's her fault, so we'll blame her. Middle school germs. Anyway, so at the January workshop, there was a discussion and a resolution, sort of a to-do list of things for the council and the TAC that we came up with. And one of the first things on that list was to go back to the TAC to talk about how to prioritize the project and how the TAC would want to do that in another workshop that would just be the TAC and looking at data and prioritizing those projects and how we would go about that. At the TAC meeting in February, after quite a robust discussion amongst the TAC members, it came to the conclusion that given the time frame of this particular iteration of the list for CDOT, with their 2050 plan coming up, that keeping the list as it is, the way that it was voted on for Tier 1 specifically, from the workshop might be the way to go, instead of putting a lot of time and effort and trying to hurry up and get something done that may not be the best thing to do. There was a request to put Harmony Road or Wells County Road 74 on the list, specifically the project to study I-25 and Harmony Road, the interchange there. TAC members did agree that providing more data and having a more data-driven way to review the projects and to look at how these different projects are, what does Tier 1 mean? What does Tier 2 mean? What does Tier 3 mean? And not necessarily having the three tiers compete against each other, but within the projects competing against each other within those tiers. So that is something that we'd like to flesh out at a later date, maybe not at this point in time for this particular list. But there were a couple of outstanding items from that discussion. So how to rank the Tier 1 roadway projects. the way that they are listed out, that I listed them out when I provided them to council last month, as well as to TAC, was just the number of votes. So the ones that got the most votes was at the top, down to the one that got like 1 vote. Is that how we want to rank those? Is there a different way? Is it by corridor? So that is one thing. Do we add Harmony Road, County Road 74 to the list? And then one thing is, what do we want this list to be? Do we want this to be all the projects that are priorities? Do we want this to be just construction projects that are priorities? Because there is a 34 planning study that's on there. This Harmony Road interchange would also be a planning study. So are those the types of projects we want to have on this list, or do we want these to be the big ticket construction projects that need to get done? And then finally, does council agree with this approach, or do you want the TAC to go back and to look at this in a more in-depth manner?
And Becky, I can add just some new insight from today. I went to the Upper Front Range TPR meeting today, and they took action on their list of priority projects. And I can share a little about what they elected to do, which was, in that case, there are 3 counties that are a part of that. And so they had each county bring forward their 10 highest priority projects, and they put them as their tier 1 projects, similar to how ours is, but it kind of fits their configuration better than it would for ours. And then they chose this time to not rank those tier 1s, so it's just a pool. Here's all the projects. The idea being then that it provides flexibility for whatever funding source is available to be able to match it with a project. And Region 4 Director Heather Paddock was there. She was able to provide some feedback on that's how she perceived it as well, that it opens up flexibility. The trade-off there is that if there's any lack of clarity about what the priority is, then at that time, it would just open up a space where some additional conversation might have to happen. If it's funding that matches really well for 3 of the projects that are in tier 1, well, then at that time, the Upper Front Range TPR would need to get together and figure out how they want to allocate that funding between the 3 projects. So that's how they elected to do it. And then, we could either, as Becky was saying, go through and use a couple different processes to try to create the 1 through how many projects?
I want to say it's about 25.
25. So
Tier 1,
25.
tier 2, and tier 3.
No, just
Just
tier
tier
1.
1.
Yeah.
There were 50 some odd.
Yeah, so in our case, if there's 25 or so on tier 1, Upper Front Range did 3 per county, 3 counties, so they had 30 on their tier 1 list. So we could rank them, or we could leave them unranked and just match with, the best funding type as it becomes available.
Can you do a hybrid version of that, where there's like, maybe some of them are ranked, like your top 5, and then your last 15 are kind of left to be flexible?
That's, you draw your constrained line down at your top, whatever it is. Because there could be 20 projects, but your constrained line gets 15. And now if your constrained line only gets 2, then you still have projects that there is additional funding. And so I think you gotta put a ranking to them. So as money or something falls out of the sky that the Transportation Commission says they start pulling out of their pockets and put money on the table, having cookie sales, bake sales, who knows? But I think you gotta pretty much get those projects in a line. And there's times that back in the day where projects, the Upper Front Range has always ranked their projects 1 through whatever. They've always done that. The North Front Range has taken different paths over the years because they're so, I-25, I-25 from Fort Collins to it's almost State Highway 7, right?
I agree with you, but for a different reason. When I saw the last list, I thought they were ranked. And I think most normal people, when they pick up a list, they think it's ranked.
It wasn't.
But they didn't have numbers in front of us, so I was a little naive, but I'm for ranking.
And Becky, correct me if I'm wrong, but they were placed in the order that they received the highest votes.
Yes, the highest
So,
vote, yeah.
yeah, so if it felt like the top ones were the most important ones to the region, they got the most votes.
And I would say that would have to come back, because I don't think when we were putting our votes, that's not how we did it.
And I can bring that back next month.
Yeah, I think that I'd like the TAC, my personal opinion, I like the TAC to take a shot and having the discussions at the TAC meeting. Hopefully our TAC representatives talk to their board members. And then we can have those discussions on how all that worked out before we get to the meeting. But I'm sure that our vision of that this board, I mean, we're the ones that have to live with that ranking of those projects. We take tax recommendations and we move them to what we want. But I think we have to maybe give them some leverage, some flexibility to rank them, have the conversations at the TAC level, and then bring them to us.
Mr. Chair, I see Commissioner Stevens.
Go ahead, Commissioner Stevens.
Okay. Yeah, I don't mind ranking, and I think everything that's been discussed seems fine. Having TAC take a stab at it. I would vote for including that Harmony corridor that I know that Bill Jenkins was talking about. I think that that's an important corridor that maybe hasn't been discussed before. I do like the idea of keeping programs that are things that are just studies in the list, because different funding comes along at different times, and being able to plug in projects that we have is important. And even if we do rank, we know that sometimes things are taken out of ranked order because CDOT has a project nearby and it makes sense to fold one of our projects into that, or there's more funding for safety than there is for, road expansion or whatever, or vice versa. And so I think having a ranking, but being flexible about how we use those dollars is really important.
Yeah, I agree. I don't want to take the planning stuff off. I think it's got to be part of the list. And there's a lot of times where they'll say, hey, North Fort Range, you got $10 million. All your projects are $100 million, but number 15 is 10 million. You might have to move it up. That's just the way it works. Go ahead.
Yeah. So Bill Jenkins from Timoth. Yeah, I'm in favor of the rankings as well. I know our engineering staff, along with engineering from Fort Collins, has been collecting data, and was presented at the I-25 coalition meeting, and it actually kind of surprised me how busy that corridor is, even compared to,
Not me. I did. I avoided it.
compared to 14 and 392. So I would like to see that presentation that you guys put together shared with the NFRMPO folks, if we could get that at least shared, so we understand what the issues are. And just as a sidebar, I know it's not data other than what I saw tonight, but on the drive up here, I came up I-25 around 5 o'clock, and the southbound I-25 traffic was stopped dead on I-25 and backed up from Harmony to the Poudre River Bridge on I-25. So there is a real issue around I-25 and Harmony interchange. So enough said.
He's lobbying in terms of also agreeing to do it.
Well,
Very smooth.
Lobbying already. We haven't even started scoring them yet.
No, there's no score. We just want it on the list so that, if an opportunity comes up for study dollars to look at it, it's not a project.
It's a real issue, for sure.
It's an issue, and
I don't think anybody's arguing with you. That's the funny part.
Well, good. Enough said.
I'll continue to not argue and say, I live 2 miles away and I do whatever I can to avoid going there. But I would ask, is there any benefit to whittling down the tier 1 to say only have 20 projects and rank those? Or is it just beneficial to leave the number we have?
I don't know. I think your tier 1s are your tier 1s, your tier 2s are your tier 2s. I don't think taking them out of the tiers is what we really want to do based on what we did on January 30th. I think from what I'm understanding and what I'm hearing is we're getting away from corridors, which does upset me quite drastically. I just want to let you know. For a lot of years, communities have on this board has put all their efforts into one community on the west side of the NPO and put all their efforts into it. Now we're saying, hey, we're going to go to projects. So it does bother me that this council is now getting away from that. But I mean, for a lot of years, I mean, City Greeley put $500,000 into I-25. I mean, we've all focused on I-25. Now we're saying it's going to be more project related than it is going to be corridor related. So I like the corridors and you rank it based on corridors, but I understand where we're at. It's pretty upsetting to all the other communities outside and not on I-25. And I don't know if I'm speaking for any other communities, but I'm definitely speaking for Greeley.
I'm happy with corridors too. I mean,
You were on 25.
yeah, it worked real nice when we had.
I-25
project,
Yeah, that's my fear. We're getting away from the regional perspective.
Right.
More isolated.
Exactly.
What's for me? What's for
right?
I'm going to fight everything that's not for me.
Right.
Which is hard if you're very small.
I was gonna say, the little guy, just like passenger rail, the little guy always loses when it comes to that.
We're gonna, I mean, like, you rank by project versus corridor, like, I don't even have a $10 million project, like, so $100 million and out, like, on all the things, we're tiny and there's a lot of action, a lot of small communities on this board, not necessarily here tonight, but
Yeah,
they do exist.
A lot of you.
Mhm.
You need a corridor.
Yeah.
She has a corridor.
She does.
And it's more represented by the North Front Range than it is by the
Mhm.
Upper Front Range.
Yeah.
Because they're right on that edge. All right, so do you have enough information? Do you know what you're doing?
Yes, sure. No, I
I'm sure my voice doesn't mean a bit of shit difference.
But one thing I did want to add, because it was brought up in the workshop as well as the meeting last month about the RSC, so the regionally significant corridors, that is something that TAC is interested in looking at. So that is something we will do over the summer into the fall, and when we kick off our 2055 RTP, because it's almost time for that. So that's all that I have.
I'm going to change the time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, with that said, it looks like we're going back to 2012 kind of in North Front Range, where everybody was fighting 24/7. That's what's gonna happen.
Weighted votes.
Weighted votes.
Did that actually happen?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I heard it was like a threat. Someone actually did that, huh?
Oh, yeah, they did. They were, I don't know if you were,
Leaving that project.
I can't remember all of the.
It's gotta be Jim Disney.
It was, yeah, it was not pretty, let's put it that way.
All of the
So,
projects.
understand Johnny's.
I think y'all did.
I was here.
Were you
Yeah,
too?
they'll all be on corridors.
Oh, yeah, you're in
20
CDOT.
corridors, it's not all corridors, like we have for the last.
7, 6.
Right, but Bill, we could talk offline about this. It will, I promise you, I was part of that 2010 to 2015, and I quit coming to the meetings and said, I'm gonna move all the money to the Upper Front Range and not take it all away from the North Front Range, because I couldn't get nothing done. It's just moving away from the regional connectivity, so we'll have to keep that in mind when we're looking at these projects.
Yeah, like a mediator.
I've just been on this, I've been here too long, I've seen it since 2010.
I've been here since 2007.
No, you have. Okay.
But who's counting?
But it's,
Yeah, it sounds like we're unanimous, this is a bad idea.
No, it's not a bad idea.
Especially if
It's
the ones that have been here the longest. I think it's a really bad idea.
changes the way the dynamics will come about for projects. That's all I'm
Which is
saying.
infighting, which is not good.
We'll just have to see how it turns out when we see the projects.
Yeah, I think next month we'll come with the list, the way that it panned out from the initial ranking. And then, this council can go through and decide how you want to rank them. If you want to keep that, or if you want to move them around, if you want to move them into corridor.
I'm interested to see how TAC comes out of it too. So
They're more reasonable than us.
I just put my concerns out there. I didn't say it was guaranteed.
You're right.
Request.
Go ahead, sir. Bill.
So with the projects and the rankings, when they come back, after it goes through the TAC, could we have corridor information associated with every project?
Good.
That way,
What information would that be, Don?
well, just know what corridor the project is on.
Okay, identify.
Identify, that's all.
Becky nodded to us over
Yeah,
there.
that's on the list.
Yeah, it'll be, I'm sure.
We'll make sure that's prominent in the information.
Okay, we're gonna move on to council reports, because we're gonna get out of here early. Council reports, Transportation Commission, Commissioner Cecil Gutierrez.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, I appreciate it. I want to say first that your review of the budget was,
Sorry, I didn't mean to
Spot
steal your
on.
thunder.
no, that's okay, because it was spot on, so I won't spend a whole great deal of time there. As everybody knows, facing some big budget cuts all across the state, every department is. CDOT is looking at, right now, at about $100 million less than a year ago, so that's a significant hit, and then it'll impact our priority list for the North Front Range and Upper Front Range and every other MPO and TPR. So, and I really think that staff has done a good job of trying to figure out ways to make the impact less, like you mentioned, at the local level. So that's a good thing. Won't spend any more time on that. Just some things that at the last meeting that were passed. I think there were a couple of issues that were resolutions that were passed that dealt with the Weld County had an MMOF match reduction request for their on-demand project, transit project, and it was approved from 50% to 25%. Platteville, their downtown sidewalk project, improvement project, same thing, from 50% to 25% match. Two condemnation resolutions, both of them around the Meade exit. There were some, when that exit was redesigned and some additional redesign took place, moving some infrastructure, there were some properties that needed to be added. And one of them, the property owner is looking for a friendly condemnation. The other one is a true condemnation. So those are going forward. Both of those resolutions were passed. And I know that you got a CTIO written report, but I want to add a couple of things here from 184. As a result of 184, there were some reports that were due on March 1st. One of them was the CTIO Multimodal Strategic Capital Plan, and that interim plan was submitted on March 1st. It is online. It's also on our website. The other report was the federal funding analysis. Those CTIO was tasked to see what kind of federal funds and opportunities there might be, and that was also submitted on March 1st. And then the final thing was the joint service report, and I don't want to steal Will and Trish's thunder here. That I'll let you guys talk about that, but it was submitted on March 1st as well. It's online now. So unless you have other questions, I'm done too.
Is CDOT the staff level? Is there any cuts to or jobs? Are they trying to preserve jobs? and just kind of taking money out of budgets, or I'm just kind of worried about CDOT staff members.
Uh,
Do you know much about that?
I don't know, I did not ask that question, but I will. I think,
I imagine if there's a huge layoff, it'll be in the paper, but I know somebody's getting laid off from the VA and stuff, so I just.
oh, well, yeah, that's federal stuff.
Yeah, so CDOT should be fine.
I have not heard of any
I've not heard that there's any mass
hiring
layoffs as a
freezes or
result.
nothing going on right now.
You're right, sorry, I'm getting the state confused with federal, so, yeah.
Yeah, the state, I know there will probably be some positions that won't be filled, maybe,
Maybe less hiring or something.
less hiring, yeah. I think they're trying to be just as lean and mean as they can be with this $100 million.
Cut.
Yeah, cut.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Anything else? Okay, moving on. Thank you, Commissioner. Staff report is written, and Kristen, thank you for doing that for me last month. Number 19, I-25 Coalition, Mr. James, Commissioner James is not here.
Mr. Chair, I was.
Okay, I was gonna say, is anybody was at the meeting?
Yeah, go ahead. I was at that meeting. There were updates on I-25 projects. There was the presentation from Timnip staff about the study and the data collection that they're doing there at the interchange. And I think the biggest thing of note is just that the group has collectively decided that they're going to get together in person for the next month in order to kind of have a work session and talk about the successes and then the purpose of the group and what they're going to work on going forward, because it's been around for a while and obviously led to a lot of success, and so there's a desire to make sure that they're still being effective. I know Commissioner Gutierrez was there, others were there. If I missed anything.
Anybody else have any comments from last night?
Kevin did a great job.
No, we're looking forward to having a good group next week.
Commissioner James wasn't there last night either, is that what I'm hearing?
He wasn't, I had to roll on.
We had a meeting, like pro. Never met you.
Yeah, I think one other report or presentation that I thought was rather interesting when it came to I-25 was from Region 1. The segments that their mobility hubs, segment, it's actually 3B and part of 2 with their mobility hubs and what they're, and they're struggling with what they're gonna do with 88th Avenue, quite frankly. Known that for a while too.
And now, is that the one?
I think I remember
Well,
a
88
report
was-
called Rotus that had that in there.
Pardon?
Nothing, just giving you a time.
Well, there's some issues, the agencies involved with that whole segment, differences of opinion about whether to make 88
Full movement.
yeah. And so that's what they're struggling with, quite frankly. That's what I'm hearing is that they can't help with that area.
All right. Well, we'll move on to number 20, Front Passenger Rail.
Right.
Who's going to do it?
Well, that's what I was gonna say, well, it's your discretion.
Go ahead.
Okay. So
You were there in person, so thank you.
Yeah.
You were there remotely.
we spent most of the time talking about, the service area, am I saying that right? Service
plan.
development.
Joint service, yeah.
Yeah, and so we were looking, we had 2 consultants come and talk to us, and one gave us the lowest cost option for joint service, starter service. And we are looking at, from Fort Collins to Denver, 8 stations, 3 are being added in the North Metro area. And the assumptions are that it'll be 3 round trips a day with 200 seats on those trains. And then I would say, another important thing is implementing positive track control signaling system in that section. And then our other consultant gave us a financial analysis of that starter service, looking at really like an $885 million price tag for that starter service. And then with the escalation up to 1.1.
So 3 in, 3 out? Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Yeah, 6 7.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's. I could drive more daggers home, but I think I've said my piece tonight. Earthly will now be the only municipality on the alignment without a stop. It's very happy for Louisville. They always should have had one, but stunning to me. Louisville's population is 20,000. They lost 1,000 last year, probably lose another this year. And the passenger rail said that they're significantly bigger than us, even though by 2030 we'll be larger than them. And that's my last dagger of the night. More to come.
More to come. All right, any questions for the Front Range Passenger Rail? All righty then, we're gonna move on to number 21, to Commissioner Stevens again with her gold. Any updates, Commissioner?
Yeah, so thank you for coming to Larimer County. I am sorry I couldn't join you. But there again, I don't want to share this lovely flu with anyone. So just a few updates on what we're doing. We got a raise/build grant that's on hold. That's for improvements on the country club corridor. The agreement wasn't finalized yet, so as of now, the funding is on hold. Thankful for the MMOF funding that was awarded for our Taft Hill project. That allows us to go forward on construction in 2026 on this long-awaited project, and that project is being done in conjunction with City of Fort Collins. So happy to have that along this major corridor that allows for a lot of commuting between Loveland and Fort Collins. The right-of-way plans have been approved by CDOT for the Pooter Trail project, and we'll start negotiations soon with property owners. Highway 34 and Glade, we're working on a punch list items and closeout, and Highway 287 and 57th Street should be out to bid in the next little bit, and construction should start at the end of May and finish this summer. So that is all the projects that we have in the hopper right now. And there again, thank you for coming out tonight and coming to Larimer County. And sorry I couldn't be with you, but I hope you enjoyed your dinner and look forward to seeing y'all next month.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful
Yeah.
dinner.
Totally understand you being remote too. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I think we all think. All right, well, if there's no other business to come before the board, I'm going to adjourn the meeting.
Thank you.